Donald Trump has been the subject of a lot of litigation. He's not somebody who's foreign to this area of the world. And he's kind of in the thick of it right now, at least kind of depending on who you ask. If you're a Democrat right now, there's a lot of news people, a lot of media personalities who are very excited about all of the developments surrounding Donald Trump. Every time he sort of sneezes, they go, oh, he's going to get indicted for that. And the question is he really, is he not? You know, I've always been of the perspective here that people who are presidents don't get indicted. People who are close to the presidency don't get indicted, and largely because it's a political thing, right? If you indict former President Donald Trump, you're going to have 71 very angry Americans who say that this was a political prosecution, because largely it is, and that does not bode well for any party in power. You sort of create a very, very volatile base of people who are angry, I think for good reasons, when it turns into a political prosecution. So, of course, I've always been of the perspective that this is probably not anything that's going to go anywhere. But if you are a Democrat, you're very excited every time there's a new development with the DA out of New York. We've been covering some of these stories here on this channel. They were going after the treasury of the Trump organization, or the CFO, the chief financial officer, investigating where his grandchildren went to school, because they're thinking this might be sort of an unreported tax gift, and they want to indict former President Donald Trump for that. So, they're very excited about it. They're kind of, pleasuring themselves a lot as it relates to this story, which they're free to do. It's America. They're welcome to do that. But on the other side of things, today, Trump had a win, right? Trump had a win today because a judge tossed a bulk of the federal lawsuits that came out from the Lafayette Park protesters. So we don't have a picture of this here today, but you remember this. This was that scene when there was a lot of protests during the summer of unrest. They were right in front of the White House. A lot of sort of peaceful protesters, but non-peaceful protesters were there as well. A lot of chaos and sort of pandemonium was taking place out there. Well, we all saw this sort of march of former President Donald Trump, Bill Barr, and some other officials from the White House walk out of the White House, down the streets, through Lafayette Park, walk over to the church, St. John's Church, I believe, and Trump stood there with a picture of the Bible right in front of the church, and held up the Bible, and everybody was taking pictures of him. And so the media went bananas. They said that Donald Trump, used law enforcement, used the FBI or the Capitol Hill police to, sort of eliminate the protesters by tear gassing them and tasing them, didn't give them adequate warning, and the list goes on. And they ran with that. And we played clips here, sort of the montage of the media hyperventilating over this. This is an evil dictator who's out there scrubbing the streets of his political enemies and going, okay, whatever. So anyway, what happened was they filed a lawsuit. Everybody who was a part of that, not everybody, but a significant portion of those protesters were part of different organizations, and they all sued Trump. And they said, hey, what you did was wrong. It was illegal, and we want monetary damages. You violated our constitutional rights, and we have a right to protest, and therefore we want money for that. We want to be compensated for what you deprived us of. And the federal judge said, no, not so fast. Before we get into this, I do want to mention, though, we also sort of heard earlier, I think this was actually last week we talked about this, but there was an actual report that came out from the Office of Inspector General, if we recall, who did an independent audit of this entire scene, went through and said, yeah, we got a lot of claims here that Donald Trump is an maniacal, evil genius who wants to just eliminate his political enemies. And he did this for the sole purpose of taking a photograph in front of the church. Well, the OIG came out and said, no, not really. We don't see that at all. In fact, it sounds like what was happening was we were already clearing the area well before Donald Trump ever even thought about leaving the White House. Why? Because it was not a good, safe environment. We're talking about a lot of very important buildings with a lot of very important bureaucrats, they tell themselves, walking all around that city. Not a good place to have violent protests taking place right outside the White House, in other words. So they were already shipping in barricades, chain link fencing. They were already rounding up the guards, saying, hey, we're bracing for impact for another night of this stuff. And as the reinforcements were arriving, that's when Donald Trump and co. walked out. That turned into this media hyperventilation panic attack about him being, an evil dictator. So he got sued today. We know federal judge dumped a lot of those cases. So dismisses the bulk of the suits against the feds. Let's go through this. Federal judge has dismissed a series of lawsuits against federal government over the use of force to drive Black Lives Matter protesters out of Lafayette Park last year. But the order from the judge will allow protesters to continue to seek damages from D.C. over actions of their police forces. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, a couple additional claims that basically the government or the judge is saying the government hasn't kind of defended themselves adequately on yet. We'll see if those go anywhere, but there are most of the lawsuit allegations, the claims, the issues are being dismissed. The rest, a very small portion of these are moving forward. So we're going to go through it. The judge, his name is Judge Dabney Friedrich, rejected the demonstrators, the protesters' claims for damages. He was suing President Donald Trump. He was suing William Barr. He was suing Defense Secretary Mark Esper, as well as some current federal officials. So they kind of just labeled the entire federal government and said, we're mad at all of you. Friedrich, a Trump appointee, he's the judge. He also declined to consider requests for an injunction barring similar use of force against protesters in the future. So the protesters are now suing, saying, hey, we got injured, we got pepper sprayed, we got pepper balled or whatever, and we want compensation for this. But it's more than that. It's saying, hey, the federal government, we've got constitutional rights, which I'm a huge supporter of. Love those constitutional rights, make my entire living defending those things because I think they're that important. We've got a whole team of people here who are just passionate about Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment. Also happen to love the rest of them a lot myself as well. But what we're talking about here is constitutional right to, let's say, free speech, right? The First Amendment. You're out there protesting. You're mad at Donald Trump for whatever reason. So you're out there and you want to, shout at him. In America, you're free to do that under certain circumstances. And what they're talking about here is they're saying we're offended. We've been constitutionally damaged because some of our rights have been stripped away from us in the form of law enforcement overstepping their bounds and abusing us. And so we want damages for that. So it's not just necessarily about, I was physically injured. I got hit with a pepper spray or my eyes were watery for a couple days. It is about my constitutional freedoms being stripped away from me, and I want compensation for that. So we're going to see those types of claims, but it's also important to note that in addition to that, they were also saying that they don't ever want this to happen again. That's the point of the injunction. They're telling the court that this was such an egregious offense. Not only do we want compensation for that, for the actual physical damages, we want compensation for the constitutional damages, but we also want an injunction. We don't want this to ever happen again. And so, Judge, we're asking you, court, to make sure that this never happens again. So let's see what the judge has to say about all of that. Let's take a look at the header of the first page here. It says Black Lives Matter, you can see as a plaintiff versus Donald Trump et al. And so this is sort of everybody's being lumped in under the Donald Trump title here. So we've got et al. Down here. We've got it looks like 5 different plaintiffs here. Ryan Roth, we've got Isabella Kavanaugh, we've got Radia Buchanan, and then we have Black Lives Matter DC. So it's only 4. My apologies. And then Donald Trump is being listed as the defendant in all of them. All right. We got different case numbers. This is filed out of the district court for the District of Columbia. So we're in federal court. And let's go through this. I'm not going to read through the entire opinion. It's about 51 pages, but we have some interesting things that we can gather right here from the start of the opinion. So it says these lawsuits arise out of law enforcement response to protests in Lafayette Square on June 1, 2020, right? And so remember, George Floyd died near the end of May. And so these protests were sort of, going on all over the country at this moment. In these related cases, 4 sets of plaintiffs, they bring various constitutional and statutory claims against the federal and state officials, including Trump, seeking both damages and injunctive relief. They want money, and they want this to never happen again. Before the court are 15 motions to dismiss. Okay, so that's a bunch of motions that are all being filed, of course, by Donald Trump. So they're motions to dismiss the complaint. The BLM and the plaintiffs sued the president and his colleagues, and they're moving to dismiss the complaint against them. So for the reasons, the court will grant the motions in part and deny the motions in part, which means some of the dismissals are going to be granted, some of them are not. Some of the issues that are being discussed may be dismissed, others may not. So background, factual allegations. Though the parties dispute various facts, in deciding these motions to dismiss, the court must accept as true all material factual allegations in the complaints. Okay, at this stage of the proceedings, the court will not accept the defendant's invitation to consider facts not explicitly alleged in the complaints. Okay, so what's he saying here? He's saying at this moment, we've got, let's call him BLM versus Trump. Okay, because that's sort of the title, plaintiff and defendant. So BLM is suing Trump. And what the court is saying is at this moment in time, because they have filed a complaint, BLM is saying we're mad about these things, this, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, free speech, blah, 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 all of the offenses. We're upset about these things. They send that over to Donald Trump. At this moment, Donald Trump and his defense team says we are moving to dismiss all of these allegations. So the court is saying, well, wait a minute. We've got some disputes about what the facts are in the first place. BLM is saying this happened. Trump, your people are saying this happened. And so we're kind of, we haven't gone to a trial yet. We haven't presented all of this evidence in front of a jury or in front of a court or anybody. This is all just sort of being done in the pleadings, in the documents that are being sent back and forth. So Trump and his people now file a motion to dismiss, and the court says, all right, well, listen, I'm going to consider your motion to dismiss, but because we have some disagreement about what the facts are, I can't consider your version of the facts. So let's do this. Let's say if I take their version of the facts, BLM's version of the facts, and I just decide all of those are true, and then I take those facts and I analyze them according to the statute, according to the law, and I come to a conclusion. If that conclusion would still support a dismissal, even if everything were true, then I'm going to grant those motions. Okay? Because so what, right? So even if they came into court and we fought about the facts and they won every single factual issue, if the law says that the case still needs to be dismissed, well, I can just go ahead and dismiss it right now. We don't actually have to go through everything because we're just going to presume that everything is in their favor. It's looking at things in a light most favorable to the non-moving party in this case. Trump wants to dismiss, so we're going to give BLM every benefit of the doubt. All right, so let's see what the judge is talking about here. He says, so for example, some of the defendants here, Trump asked the court to consider news articles referenced in the complaints that preceded and detailed the unrest of July 1, saying that there was rioting, looting, and property damage that occurred the night before in the area of Lafayette Square. He says they also, Trump's motions here, also point to the fact and the factual findings of Mayor Muriel Bowser, whose order on May 31, 2021, implementing a citywide curfew on June 1st, 2020. Okay, so we've got some more information. He says the judge says the court will not consider these disputed allegations because they are not integral to the plaintiff's claims. And he says also, nor would they affect the outcome. So the defense is saying, hey, we've got some things that we want to show you about this. He says it doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter. It's not even integral to their claim, and it doesn't change the outcome either way. So defense, keep your facts. Don't even need them. All right, let's go on. We're going to take a quick paragraph here from the actual order, the opinion. It says the plaintiffs here, so that would be BLM and co., they allege that, quote, peaceful protesters assembled in the historic Lafayette Park across from the White House, which we all saw, to protest the racial injustice after the death of George Floyd and other black people at the hands of law enforcement. They further allege, in response to the peaceful protest, that officials wielding batons sprayed the crowd with tear gas, flashbang grenades, smoke bombs, and rubber bullets. To the extent that any of the plaintiffs allege that the law enforcement officers provided warnings before dispersing the crowd, they say that those warnings were futile and they were also inadequate. So they were given via a megaphone approximately 50 yards away from the closest protesters, and they were, quote, barely audible. So the allegation is that, they were just kind of standing there peacefully protesting with the signs up, Trump is an evil monster, yay. Okay, so they were doing that, and, down the street, 50 yards away, half a football field, you've got some police officers like, disperse everybody, get out of here before. Oh, well, we gave them 3 or 4 orders, so, hey, Lou, they didn't hear us, hit them with the gas. Lou's like, yeah, perfect, pop, 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 just, flying off projectiles. And so, it's kind of a tricky situation going on there. And so we've got some different facts that we're going to fight about. But the judge says, well, not even going to care about those facts. Don't even care what Trump and his people say. Could have been 50 yards, could have been 10 yards, could have been 2,000 yards. Doesn't really matter because we're just going to move on with the rest of our analysis. He says, let's see, 50 yards away. Now, before the court, so I wanted to just flesh this out for a quick second. I'm not going to read through the entirety of the complaint because there is really a lot here. But it's about 16 pages, and they talk about some of the different complaints and allegations that are moving forward. Let's go through this again. We've got, before the court now, are 15 motions to dismiss that were filed by the defendants. Okay, so we've got former president, former AG, we've got U.S. Park Police, National Guard, U.S. Secret Service, we've got Federal Bureau of Prisons, Arlington County Police Department, we've got District of Columbia Metro PD in their official capacity, Secretary of Defense, Chief U.S. Park Police, Director of the Secret Service, Commanding General of the National Guard, FBI. For these reasons and follow, the court will grant the motions in part and deny the motions in part. So I want to show you sort of how this works. And I wanted to pause on that slide briefly because you see all of the different agencies that are involved in all of this stuff, right? And I've made this point many times on this show. It's kind of amazing to me that we had the January 6th insurrection take place when you've got the Secret Service, Bureau of Prisons, Columbia, Park Police, National Guard, Federal Bureau of Prisons, U.S. Secret Service, U.S. Park Police, D.C. National Guard, Arlington County Police, the Attorney General's office, and everybody else who is just like rats around a Cheeto, and they're just going hog wild over there, law enforcement all over the place, but they can't stop 1,000 people from getting into the Capitol building. It's just like amazing. The incompetence is just outstanding. So, all right. So let's take a look at what the biggest claim that is being brought forward, which is sort of the idea that federal agents, Trumpers, were seizing constitutional rights from the peaceful protesters. That's kind of the main allegation here, that they were exceeding the use of force, the proper use of force. They were infringing upon constitutional rights. There should be monetary damages and an injunction. So about the first 16 pages of this entire opinion are talking about this thing called a Bivens actions. What is that? What is a Bivens action? Let's take a quick look. It says a Bivens action generally refers to a lawsuit for damages, which is exactly what we just saw, okay, because they want money, they want damages. When a federal officer who is acting in the color of federal authority allegedly violates the U.S. Constitution by the federal officers acting. Okay, that comes over from Cornell. And it says that we go through this analysis here. So now that we kind of know what it is, it's the idea that a federal agent is depriving you of a constitutional right. It's called a Bivens actions. And if you go through the full 16 pages, essentially the judge is summarizing, or I will summarize what the judge was arguing or ruling, but that this is essentially not a violation of acting under the color of law. So when we talk about the color of law, it's sort of acting with authority, right? A police officer comes and orders you out of the vehicle. He's doing so under the color of law. He's got the lawful authority to do that. If some random person pulls you over and says, get out of the car, you're like, well, who the hell are you? What? No, you're not an officer. You don't have any authority to make that order. And so here the allegation is that they're sort of acting under the color of law to do something that's not constitutional. And what the judge goes through is he says, listen, perfectly lawful what these officers did. In fact, Congress has even considered this, and he goes through in 16 pages and analyzing the context of what was taking place there, talking about public safety concerns, being right on the perimeter of some very sensitive buildings, says that Congress actually, when they were drafting some of the national security laws and some of the guidance for how to manage this space, specifically contemplated, sort of removing protesters away from there. And so the idea that they were acting, unlawfully or outside of the color of that law, the court's saying no, they were doing exactly what they're supposed to do. In fact, they're federal officers and they're supposed to be maintaining security on these premises. Congress even specifically contemplated the removal of protesters, and we had the OIG report come out, and everything's kind of kosher here. So nothing even really worth taking much more time on. He says, in conclusion, these special factors make it inappropriate to extend Bivens into the new context presented by these cases. Court will grant the defendant's motion to dismiss the Bivens claims. Okay, so all of those just go right away. Congress has contemplated this. It wasn't a violation of constitutional rights on that basis. So the one claim I mentioned at the start of the show that really does stick with them is this equitable claim for relief here. The plaintiffs, the court says, have standing to challenge the continued restrictions on the Lafayette Square. It says they have plausibly alleged an ongoing injury. It says to this day, over a year after the events of June 1, Lafayette Square remains subject to heightened restrictions that periodically limit protesters' access to the square. So he says despite the changes in the administrations, federal defendants, here the Biden administration, they still have not met the high bar of showing that this claim has been mooted by subsequent events. So, this is the idea that the park is still on lockdown, essentially. And the court is saying, well, why is that? You need to justify, if you're going to continue this course of action, it was justified back on June 1, but maybe not now anymore. So if you want to explain that, you're welcome to do that, but you have to meet the high bar. The plaintiffs will still have a claim. They can still move forward with that and craft some sort of equitable relief for that. Okay, and I want to show you the sentence here dismissing most everything else. If you recall back during the election, we talked a lot about standing and about a dismissal of a case prior to it ever reaching the court. Well, here we've got something similar. It says the plaintiff's remaining claims for the injunctive relief are dismissed for a lack of standing. Their remaining statutory claims are also dismissed for a failure to state a claim. All right, so basically they put a bunch of stuff in a complaint, but it's not kind of a legal claim. It's like you're mad about a bunch of stuff, but so what? What do you want us to do with that? What is your claim? It's got to be something that the law recognizes. And what is the remedy for that claim? He said, well, you didn't state a claim that is recognized under the law, therefore that gets dismissed, and you've got no standing to come and complain about the injunction for whatever relief they were requesting to follow. So most of the cases are dismissed. I think largely a big win for Trump. And we've got, for the foregoing reasons, the motion to dismiss are granted in part, denied in part. Showed you what that was. A separate order consistent with this decision accompanies the memorandum, signed off on here by Dabney Friedrich. So don't know if anybody's going to appeal this, right? A lot of these people were plaintiffs, not the government, so they'd have to come up with some funds to, hire an attorney to appeal these up to a higher court. We'll see if it goes anywhere. Does that mean that the Trump litigation saga is over in any way, shape, or form? No, definitely not. Are you kidding me? It's probably just getting started. In fact, there's a Manhattan district attorney's race happening right now. People are probably voting literally as I'm recording this. And you'll take a snapshot. This is what these people look like. And there's an article here today from Business Insider. It says the next Manhattan DA will take over the Trump Organization investigation. Yes, they will. We asked all 9 candidates how they'd handle the case. Right? So if you ever hear anybody say, to be fair to the DAs, they all answered this extremely professionally and very well, as far as I can tell. But, the media is just salivating over anything related to Trump investigations. You have all these people running. You know that they're prosecutors, they're district attorney. They can't comment on that stuff. That it would disqualify their office. And so they're not going to say anything. But the media is still they want that soundbite. They want that slip. So they went around, of course, Jacob Shamsian over here asked everybody all these questions. What are you going to do? So we've got all these people, top row, Tahini Abusi, Deanna Florence, and so on. Across the top, they're all running. I think the election is happening right now. So they asked all 9 candidates how they'd handle the DA's investigation into the Trump Organization. Many of them declined to comment directly, saying it would be unethical to speculate about an ongoing case, while some criticized opponents for perceived conflicts of interest in Trump's case. All of them vowed to protect New Yorkers, keeping in mind the violence at the Capitol, of course. Virtually every candidate told Insider they would take a straight and narrow approach to the Trump investigation, looking at the facts and making decisions based on the evidence before them. So somebody said, Eliza Orlins, who used to be a public defender, said that if the facts demonstrate that a crime has been committed, it's up to the district attorney to make a determination as to whether that crime should be prosecuted. Donald Trump is no different from any other person in that way. Okay, so, yeah, perfect answer, flawless answer, Eliza Orlins and the rest of the DA people. It's great, excellent job. So it's going to be hard to show that there's a conflict of interest here. If one of them had come out and said, "Yeah, no, absolutely, we're going to wreck Donald Trump. We're actually going to prosecute him and wreck him," well, then Donald Trump would have a pretty good argument for trying to disqualify that particular district attorney, saying that this is a prosecutorial misconduct, this is an unethical, personal motivational political bias, rather than anything that resembles probable cause that would lead to legitimate criminal charges. So we they're saying the right things. So good for them. Does anybody believe it? That's a whole nother story. Now, it's not just stopping there. They are going to continue the inquisition into Donald Trump in every little facet and crevice of his entire organization. And here we are now with his bodyguard. So if you recall, just to catch you back up to speed, there was a CFO, I think, from the Trump Organization, goes by the name of Weisselberg, who is somebody who's under high scrutiny from the Attorney General from New York and from the DA's office over there. Cyrus Vance Jr. is the current Manhattan District Attorney. So they're just going hog wild there on the Trump investigation. Very excited about it. And they're even going so far as to investigate the place that Alan Weisselberg, the CFO, where his grandkids, I think, go to school, because the allegation is that Donald Trump was improperly funneling money to pay for their tuition and then using that to finagle his way out of taxes, rather than paying the CFO, let's say $150,000 for this private school. and then him having to take that as income and then actually pay it out to the school. Maybe the Trump organization just kind of, funnels that through as a business expense, or I don't know how he would have done it, as an educational gift or something like that. But they're saying, hey, this is a problem. Donald Trump didn't pay taxes on it. Uh-oh, that's a crime. Now we're going to investigate Donald Trump and, grind through that. So my point here is like everything. I mean, they are every single stone. They've been doing this for, 6 years, 7 years, 6 years now. I mean, if Donald Trump really started getting serious about running in, 2015? Yeah, 7 years. We're 15, 6 years, coming up on 7 years here. Woo! So a lot of investigation, a lot of deep diving on that. And now they're going after the bodyguard. So this story comes over from the Wall Street Journal. Rebecca Ballhaus and Corinne Ramey said that Matthew Calamari, he is now the Trump's organization's chief operating officer, has hired his own attorneys as prosecutors investigate the company's employees' perks. So that it looks like the COO is now also under investigation, as well as Trump's former bodyguard. So let's take a look. Calamari, they're asking whether he received tax-free fringe benefits, part of a probe into whether Trump and his employees were illegally paying taxes. Prosecutors' interest in Mr. Calamari, once Trump's bodyguard, so it's the same guy actually, the bodyguard got promoted to the COO. Man, that Trump organization likes to promote within. It's outstanding. Indicates that their probe into the Trump organization's alleged practice of providing some employees with cars and apartments extends beyond Weisselberg, the company's CFO, and his family. So neither Mr. Calamari or Weisselberg nor anyone else connected to the company has been accused of wrongdoing. They're just looking at investigating him so they could get Trump. Receiving benefits like a free apartment, subsidized rent or car leases from an employee and not paying taxes on the benefits can be a crime. Although experts say prosecutors rarely bring cases on such perks alone, unless you happen to be Donald Trump, who they all have a political bend against. The office of the Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance has for months been pressuring Weisselberg to cooperate. There's no indication they've been successful, and Mr. Vance's office, in coordinating with Letitia James, we talked a lot about Letitia, here she is, has said it is working on a broader criminal probe into the potential bank, insurance, or tax fraud by the organization and its officers. Letitia James, we've talked about her a lot here on this channel. She was the one who specifically ran in order to go against Donald Trump. We played a clip of her on this channel. Remember, she said, oh gosh, I can't remember the quote. I played it like 2 times. It was a good one. Something like, illegitimate president. She was very mad about it. A lot of facial animation going on when she was saying it, which is how you can tell she's very upset. Because a lot of movement going on there when she was president. I remember that one. Yeah, it was a fun show. All right, so who is this guy? Now, this guy, I wanted to just show you a picture of Trump's bodyguard and the COO. I mean, it's very Trumpy. Let's take a look at this guy. Here he is. And he looks like a bodyguard. I mean, I'm not laughing at the man because this guy could just like snap me in half. But look at these shoulders, my friends. I mean, the shoulders here, it's like 5 feet right here. Right? He's like as wide as I am tall. And look at this. He doesn't even have a neck. This is a bodyguard and the COO of the Trump organization. There is no neck there. His hands are like, outstanding. So it's very perfect. When I saw Trump bodyguard, looks like, I don't know what he looks like. Somebody who's perfect for the role. Donald Trump's bodyguard is now under investigation from Letitia James. Right. So Trump is still, going to be going through some litigation, and hopefully he's got some good lawyers. By the way, if you need a good lawyer, if you happen to have been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, that's what we do on a daily basis. Want to show you the R&R Law Group. These are the crimes that we help with. These are the criminal charges that we can help people get through. Things like drug charges, traffic tickets, felony charges, DUI charges, traffic violations, clearing up old mugshots, old expungements. We can do a lot to really help people restore their rights and get things back on track. So if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona that needs some help, we'd very much appreciate a referral to our law firm. We offer free case evaluations. We would love the opportunity to help. And if you don't need actual legal services, maybe you could use a little education. How about the law enforcement interaction training, which is available now at gumroad.com/Robert Grueller. And we did a 2.5-hour training here, law enforcement interaction training. It was a lot of fun. I thought it was very, very good turnout, great questions, very interactive. And so if you want to catch the replay, you can get that at gumroad.com/Robert Grueller. If you're looking for personal productivity systems, check the Existence Systems out. And if you are somebody who's a lawyer or a legal assistant or somebody who works in the legal field, check out the Grueller method. We call it the Legal Mastermind. We've got a call coming up on that next week. Been doing that for about 2 years now. And we've got a little bit of some good stuff going on there. So check that out if you're interested. Also, be sure to check out all of the links down in the description below. And do not forget to come and join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is really the place to be. All of the good stuff that's happening and all the different projects. Home base is at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We really do appreciate your support there.